2. Welcome back, WNST, Tassin, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It has been a long, hot summer here in Baltimore, Maryland, and we have been waiting. I've been waiting for 25 years to hear that the Baltimore Orioles are for sale. Michael Lesker, a family friend of the Angeloses for a long, long time, inked a piece, Sunday morning news drop, which clearly got my attention. It's also gotten the attention of lots of other folks that I've met on life's journey. This guy and I had a few beverages together in Portland, Oregon a few years ago. He plays in an AC/DC cover band. He is the longtime business reporter now with Forbes out of the Portland area. I know him as Bizball Maury. He is Maury Brown. You can follow him at Bizball Maury on Twitter and all sorts of places. And Maury, this is a chance. First off, how are you? It's great to have you on. We're going to talk some rock and roll. We're going to talk baseball, pennant races, all sorts of stuff. But this story has brought people like you and me together. And you are Bizball, Maury, because your first foray into all of this literally was trying to be a guy to bring the Expos to Portland, Oregon, as I remember it, right?
Yeah, it was. And I'm good, Nestor. I'm glad that we finally get to talk after a long time. Yeah, I mean, that was really largely the start. It was, I call it the greatest, at the time, it was the greatest Sabre project that anybody could be involved in. It was like really trying to see if the market could support a team. And, the Expos gave that opportunity to do a really substantive market research. And like it was done on a shoestring. I worked with the mayor and whatnot. It's a little bit different than it is now. But yeah, that's really the impetus for my whole thing and getting into the business side of things. It's, of course, branched out greatly from there. But I'm always interested, of course, when we're talking about relocation or new ballparks being built.
And Maury, I'm familiar with that. Listen, I was 15 years old when the Colts left. I had just started to work at the newspaper at that time. When I was January 1984, team left in March of 84, and literally for the next 12 years, every minute of my life I spent in a newspaper sports department where day by day, is Bill Bidwell bringing the Cardinals to Baltimore? Can we have a meeting with Al Davis? Can we get to Georgia Frontiere? Is there a way to steal Joe Robbie and bring the Dolphins here? And they're going to build it. All of these things that happened in the 80s and 90s formed my life for all of this and your career as well, because deep down in you somewhere, you believe someday Portland, Oregon will have a Major League Baseball team, right?
Well, I do. I mean, yes, hopefully, maybe. I'm kind of, I'm kind of agnostic on it now.
Well, I never believed we were getting an NFL team back here. There was never any real belief that was ever going to happen here. Just like Maury, I'm not going to find anybody, including you, who really believes the Orioles are leaving until they do. You know what I mean? Like, literally, no one wants to believe the Orioles are leaving here. And I know they have the network tethered to them, which does make it more unique that they would leave here. But I also know the President of the United States is dog in my town. And I know you've got trees and a fresh market, and Nashville has country music, and Las Vegas has glitter, and Mexico City has 9 million residents, and another country for Major League Baseball to go pillage. So there are possibilities out there, man, and your town is one of them that does believe. There are people there that believe that there's Uncle Phil's going to come bring a baseball team, right?
Well, I don't know if it's Uncle Phil, but it's certainly, they said whether it's non-binding or not, they've got $1.3 billion in financial assets, that are available to them and whatnot. And they're working, doing a story for the week that'll be around where they are in terms of their, trying to acquire land and everything that's involved with it. Look, I think the big thing, Nestor, is that in all this stuff, nothing is easy. Nothing. I mean, it is the most difficult thing, I think, in sports, is either getting stadiums or arenas built or moving them. And it's just so painfully difficult to do that. It requires so much to align to make it happen. So,
which is really a tribute to Baltimore in retrospect, that we ever stole the team, got the stadium built, and won 2 Super Bowls. You know what I mean? Like, that's really, really hard to do, and I'm trying to impress that upon people here. Like, if the Orioles leave, it's really, really hard to get them back, and it's really, really hard to support them when they're here. Quite frankly, it's not easy supporting 2 franchises, as Baltimore is learning in the modern era, from business, from how much tickets are, from how much sweet sponsorship, for all that encompasses a successful franchise franchise is one that everyone in the community contributes to in some way. That's what builds the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago Cubs, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I would look at with them, Nestor, is what is the kind of the prevailing issue around why we're having this discussion around the Orioles right now anyway. And it really boils down to Peter Angelos and the family, right? And we can have all kinds of debates about whether they have or have not run the team properly. I don't think that they have, and you know, there'll be some people that'll probably argue with both of us around that conversation. But look, I mean, the key thing is, and shouldn't be surprising. I mean, you know, it's not like Peter Angelos is young anymore. I mean, his health is failing. They needed a control individual for the club. There's clearly a succession plan, but that succession doesn't get executed until something happens, and then it changes a lot. So I'll speak to a franchise that I know, or franchises that I know more about, and how this sort of thing works. So. In the Pacific Northwest, Paul Allen owns the Seattle Seahawks. He also owns the Portland Trail Blazers. And there was a big concern when Paul Allen passed away that what would happen with those franchises. And it left the market in limbo for a little bit, especially the Blazers. Everything seems to be fine under his sister, but not every family is going to operate like that. I mean, not everybody wants to take that stuff on. It's a lot of work. So, look, that article today was really interesting. I found it interesting. I'm not so sure about Knoxville. I sit there and I go, why would you ditch Baltimore? Why?
There's no money here, Maury. I mean, I live here. There's no business sponsorship money here. And they've torched so many bridges, the Angelos family, and where baseball was with Cal Ripken and where it is right now with Chris Davis and Brandon Hyde, that the good news is if there is an Uncle Phil here who rolls his sleeves up and bets $1.5 billion on the baseball team, that guy would be all in because this is the time the lease needs to be negotiated, right? So, like, if you're buying it to keep it in Baltimore, it's very obvious. You'll do a 15 or 20-year lease, right? And you'll get on with the business of running the Baltimore Orioles in an appropriate fashion, which it hasn't been done in 3 decades, quite frankly. And then you'll find out whether all of my sponsors that I have here want to ante up at that level. And the Ravens are finding out right now that the NFL ain't cheap. Major League Baseball ain't cheap. It's not easy for Royal Farms to just say, well, here's $600,000, put some ads up for us and run some coffee ads for us. That money's just not lying around as a guy that sells advertising and media for a living and has for 3 decades. And then there's the whole pylon of Baltimore as this third-rate, third-world place, which it's not, by the way, Maury, because I know you follow my pictures and you see what I do. And I was in Camden, New Jersey last week, so I know the difference between a place that's boarded up and a place that's just simply needs some more love and some better leadership and has incredible natural resources. But the Orioles as a resource for downtown Baltimore, Maury, I can't begin to tell you the devastation the Angelos family has wrought upon my town. They brought a death to my hometown on summer nights because nobody's at the games, and that's the reason it was built. I mean, if Portland builds a baseball team on the riverside there and no one comes, it doesn't do Portland any good. And if they come for 5 years and then some jackass buys the team and they wind up in last place for 25 years and no one comes, it's not good for Portland. In the same way it hasn't been good for Tampa, it hasn't been good for Oakland and a bunch of Miami and other places where no one comes. At some point there's a love mark of this, where your community loves the Trailblazers and you need to love it, and the Orioles aren't loved here anymore. They're almost pathetic, you know what I mean? That you almost feel sorry for them, quite frankly, but not sorry enough to come downtown and leave any money behind,
Yeah, and I mean, look, and you're hitting on the main issue, right, Nestor, which is, the Angelos family, and that seems to be the impetus of it. And, if you look at other clubs, the ones that have run well are largely, about a specific individual. Now, look, markets can drive a lot. A storied brand that has had a long run of, at least the fans either understood them to suck, and we love them for that, which was the Cubs and the Red Sox for a long time, or they've just been fairly well run. Now, the Yankees, of course, are we think about them that way, but of course they have every club has bad runs. It's that idea that they have some history and some goodness out of them, and the Orioles have that. I mean, that's the thing that's really bothersome. I would hate to see it just to pick up teams and move them just because someone did a poor job of it. And really, the thing that I would get back to is I don't understand. You can sit there and talk about the dearth of the market based upon the politics of the day, but I don't buy that. I really don't in the overall. What are you going to give them to the Lerner family and let the Lerner family basically take it? We flip the coin, and once the Orioles own Washington, D.C., and they own Baltimore, and now we're going to let the Lerners own Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. I mean, I suppose, but it just doesn't seem to make sense. The league does not like moving teams around. Baseball is very different than other sports. They really don't like doing it. And if that happens, Nestor, look, you're really going to start to look for that to happen. You won't get that until there's a relocation or expansion committee available out of the next collective bargaining agreement. And the league hasn't done that. So even if the lease comes up in 2021, that would be the starting point for Rob Manfred and the league to go, all right, we better get serious about this. And then there's this whole RFP process where all the markets would go, you know what, we want the Orioles. Or you know what, we want, whatever team's open, Oakland, the Rays, whoever it is. Then we'll start to have that conversation. But even then, it's supposed to get in the geographic realignment. I don't see the Orioles coming out here any more than I see the Rays coming to Portland. That doesn't make any sense. Oakland seems to be the only one, and Oakland seems to be on its way. I mean, for Portland, do they create an opportunity? Do they create leverage? Absolutely they do. I mean, that's the thing.
Well, what's the deal in Portland right now? If let's say John Angelos doesn't want to move to Portland. He'd rather just move to Nashville and cash out and take the money and go play his guitar. You know what I mean? But for Portland, what is attractive? And I'm not going to ask you about Austin or Montreal. I mean, you know those things, but you know Portland intimately. I just looked up Portland's population. I mean, all of these markets, Vegas, Nashville, Portland, Baltimore, all have about 650, 700,000 people. Like, they are the same market. Strangely enough, I looked up Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas almost has 1 million people. So if you're talking about a place that has baseball being played, all that stuff, that maybe that's another place we should be talking about. But what municipality wants it? Where is the place where there's going to be a champion, a leader, a mayor, a governor, an infrastructure, free money, development, mixed use? Where is that next Cobb County coming from, Maury? Because that's really what it's about. It's not about any one person or Major League Baseball. It's who's going to offer the best deal, who has the mansion on the hill, who has the bigger, better deal, and who looks to be the place where if we go there, everyone's going to love us, and we're gonna kill it for 5 or 10 years just by showing up.
Yeah, and this is all those things, Nestor. All those things you brought up are the core things. I mean, this is a baseball guy. Congratulations. I mean, that is largely the thing that I think a lot of fans don't catch. So you're right. They're all small markets. They're all small markets, or they are mid-markets that are oversaturated. I mean, Vegas, I don't know how you would do it. It's a small market. Their television market is tiny. Portland's television market, it could be, might be, we'll see how that is. It's certainly going to have to overlap others. The advantage that we got here in Portland is that, of course, right across the river is Vancouver, Washington, and to the south of Salem. And when you look at what the larger demographic, you look at it, it's about 2.2 million. It's like the 22nd largest market in the country, something thereabouts. But it's still small. I mean, that's the issue at hand. So right now for Portland, you do have a political will in place. After years of being very anti all this stuff, you've got some stuff going on with it right now. And so, those are the things. Montreal is in the same boat. I mean, Oakland's in the same boat. Oakland is trying to get their land with the Howard Terminal location on the water. Very reminiscent of what you've seen, with the Orioles and whatnot. But the idea of making that happen comes up against a bunch of other things, a bunch of considerations. Whether it's not Portland, Oregon, but Portland down there. There's all that stuff that goes with it, and the infrastructure that goes along with it, and the money that goes along with it, and all those things are really tough. Montreal to me is, and here we are today on the 25th anniversary of, and here we are right around the 25th anniversary of the strike, the 94 strike, and that's bothersome.
Wow, this week is the 25th anniversary, isn't it? Wow. All right.
Yeah. So when you think about that strike that took out the World Series, what I always think about is where the Expos were, and they were right. There were arguments were waged, but a lot of people think that the Expos were the best team in the National League at that point in time, especially the NL East. And so I would sit there and say, what would have happened? They seem to me to deserve a team, but there are lots of markets that deserve teams. There are a lot of people that want to make a team home and make them welcome and happy. It's so much more than that. So they've got to try.
By the way, Montreal's got 2 million people. By the way, you don't think of Montreal as being huge. Montreal's big, man.
Yeah, they are, and that is, I think, a big advantage to that market. And I really think that, look, the situation with Tampa Bay was, I think, this idea that there's going to be some split season thing. That's just crazy. That to me is ludicrous. Who wants to fund ballparks for half a season? It just doesn't make any sense. So what I really believe, Nestor, is that is really giving Montreal the leg up. They're going to go, all right, if Tampa Bay doesn't do this, you guys are aware that if they can't come through, we're going to come to you guys. And I think that all of the things that are lining up right now, whether it's the Orioles, whether it's the A's, or whether it's the Rays, or whether it's expansion, something's going to happen or have to happen to have this really get into gear and be able to cobble together stuff. I think out of hopefully this next labor deal that comes together, I think that the idea of putting together a relocation or expansion committees has to happen so that they can start to really ferret out who's real. Now, Portland looks fairly real. I mean, they're struggling to get this land purchase to happen. And my article this week is largely about another location that they're looking at. And the reason that they're looking at a second location, Nestor, is that one of them, the one that sits on the river, is taking a little bit of time. Well, if you're experienced and you go, well, we'd like to get into this now, but we got a little bit of time here. So the infrastructure being built out, it's funded and takes a little bit longer. Cool. If somebody showed up on our doorstep here in Portland tomorrow, well, that would be a whole different ball of wax. And then you would have to look at something that would be easier to get into, less zoning problems and whatnot. And they're looking at another location. They're looking at several, but another one that's popped up is out there. And that, when I've talked to Craig Sheep, the head of the Portland Diner Project, that is exactly what he said. We have to think about what happens if somebody shows up and how our timelines look based upon expansion. But if somebody showed up on our doorstep, how would that look? And this would happen if so let's just say that the Angeles family goes, we want to move. We're going to Nashville or wherever it is. Then it's like, okay, well, it takes a while to build these things and get the money and buy the land and put the thing up and fund it. And that's just, are they going to, they're trading one problem for another. They're going to move out of Baltimore where they got a ballpark, but they want to go down there where they don't have anything. It's like, hey, man, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And I think in that sense, leaving Baltimore would be a very bad idea. And I think that Rob Manfred and the league would very much say, guys, I think you better think twice about this idea before you even start to even examine it.
Maury Brown is here. He is Bizball Maury out on Twitter and on social media. He's at Forbes writing about the business of sports, primarily the business of baseball as a baseball insider in Portland, Oregon, where he began an effort almost 25 years ago to steal the Montreal Expos. Now the Orioles are somewhat in play. Maury, the bigger story here, I think all the way around might be just the fact that a team is for sale, right? Like that is sort of a major thing, in any year that a Major League Baseball franchise becomes available. Universally, where are the Steve Ballmers to step up to buy a baseball franchise in a depressed market like Baltimore right now, in a crowded market like Baltimore right now with the football team, the baseball team, all that goes on in the corridor? How does this become attractive as a business play to some billionaire who collected Mickey Mantle baseball cards, who's always wanted to own Boog Powell's team?
Yeah, I think the easiest one on this one is to look at what happened with Miami. I mean, if you can sell the Miami Marlins that were absolutely driven squarely into the ground in a market that is horribly depressed and has no interest in baseball right now because of what ownership did for $1.2 billion, it's just a play and demand thing, Nestor. I mean, baseball is making money. It's a $10 billion industry. So,
But I guess what I'm asking is, there a
not.
line of a dozen people looking to get the next baseball team and just waiting for this to go on? Like that
Yeah.
house that sells before it even gets to the market. I don't know that the Orioles are that franchise, and I don't know that the Angelos boys are looking to cut any sort of a discount deal on the way out the door, or are really
No,
worried about whether the team stays here or not. That if Mr. Big comes along and puts $2.1 billion in front of them and says, I don't really care about the television network because I'm moving the team to Mexico City, you know what I mean? Like, that's where, we have 9 million people here in a country. We'll just figure it out. We don't really need Masson. We've driven that to the end of the road anyway. If someone doesn't find the television network attractive and just wants the team, boy, that's a different place than maybe where we were, where 20 years ago they dangled the Montreal Expos forever. It got you involved in sports, right? You got 5 other cities involved, and yet in the end, no one really wanted that franchise. I mean, that's why they dabbled in San Juan and all the other crazy nonsense that they did 20 years ago. They couldn't find anybody to buy it. They couldn't find anywhere to move it, quite frankly.
Well, it wasn't that people didn't want it. And that's the thing, though. But, I mean, you hit on something that's really critical to this whole thing, and that's Masson. Like, I don't – look, so is Derek Jeter and his, ownership group getting purchasing a franchise that's in a distressed state and having to really triage and figure out how to get them out of the red and trying to get them righted? Absolutely. But their TV deal that they'll come upon when their new one opens up at least provides some, at least some glimmer of hope. And this situation with Masson is crazy. I mean, it has been stuck in neutral for so doggone long. And it's funny, I talked about Selig a couple of weeks ago, and it's funny to bring up Masson. He's just like, I'm not so sure that we did maybe that right in how we did that. And that was, I think, the understatement of the year. When I talk about it with Rob Rafter, he will never say anything directly, but you can just tell. It's no secret that it's a huge debacle, and it created a real problem. And it created a real problem. You solved one problem. You were able to get the Expos down near Baltimore and get them into Washington, D.C., but it created this other problem with how the Masson ownership is set up. And so if you sell the team, and you're going to keep it in Baltimore, they got to take that on. Or I could strangely see a weird situation to where you can have the sale of the Baltimore Orioles, but remember, the Angelos family owns Masson. The entity and Masson can sue themselves. I mean, it sounds crazy, right? Wait a second, you guys are screwing us by moving out of our market. I mean, it just sounds weird. It's like one hand washing the other.
Well, Maury, if you knew the history of all of this and really read between the lines, they've been screwing themselves on payroll for 15 years. They have artificially been underfunding themselves via Masson, because every nickel that leaves Masson that goes to the Orioles goes to the Nationals. So everything they could do to strangle the Orioles, literally anything they could do to tourniquet how much money goes from the network to the baseball team, they've done that. They have pocketed so much money off this television deal over 15 years, no one will ever find that money. You know what I mean? So, and they're going to cry little boy poor over the next 2 years as they try to get a lease here and maybe move the franchise to someone locally. I mean, it's a disaster here, Maury. I mean, not only on the field, off the field, what it means for the business community, what it's done to downtown Baltimore, how it's ripped the city apart. I mean, all of that. But now this sale and this notion, like the fans here really think like Kevin Plank's loaded. Kevin Plank doesn't have 5 nickels to rub together for a $2 billion asset that you need liquidity for. You know what I mean? Like they just think Mr. Big's going to ride in. Some guy from Legg Mason is here's the one that cracks me up. That Bisciotti wants to own the baseball. Bisciotti doesn't even want to own the football team anymore. You know what I mean? Like, people are in fantasy land here, especially the people following the Orange Con man as president. Like, what else do they believe? They believe anything they're told by the establishment in the baseball team. They believe that, like, the Angeloses have run this thing in good faith over the last 20 years, and they have not. And now they're going to sell it, and all of a sudden we're expected to think they're going to be honorable, literally, and look out for us as this. They don't care about us. They don't even live here, man. Like they live in Nashville. So it's disturbing to me on a lot of levels, but I am fascinated by what's going to happen as the Orioles sale or moving on becomes a national concern, and guys like you and Ken Rosenthal come sniffing around to try to figure out what's Rob Manfred really going to, what does he really want? Maybe Major League Baseball wants out of Baltimore. I don't know that. Maybe they think we're an S-hole like the president does, and no human being would want to live here, right? Like, that's what's out there about my town right now. So I don't know that Steve Ballmer is looking to invest $2 billion to save the Orioles for Baltimore, as opposed to, hey, let's move them to Nashville and go make some money,
Yeah, I think so. There's some other problems too, Nestor. It's not just so. I think about it holistically, right? So it's not just Baltimore, and you have a potential ownership change there, and then there's a discussion about whether they're going to move or whether they're going to get a favorable lease. I think a large part of it is around all that. The other piece of this is that the Diamondbacks are trying to get a ballpark figured out, and I think they're saber rattling when they're talking about Henderson, Nevada. I mean, you can't go and investigate any of these markets. Now, you cannot do that with any sense of formality or with any sense of organizational muster until the league says, we are now allowing you to go do that sort of thing. They figured this out when we had this wild expansion in the 60s. And they figured out that we have to control how we handle this stuff. And it's just, it affects how one team handles moving or selling or anything affects the whole. Well, so Oakland and Tampa Bay are struggling in their markets and trying to get it figured out. Suddenly the Diamondbacks are upset about their situation at Chase Field. They want to get something figured out. Well, now Baltimore's in there. So Rob Manfred is sitting there with 4 clubs that are sitting there suddenly in a bit of turmoil, trying to figure out what they want to do about facilities. And this creates just, I think, some problems. I mean, just in general. I think a general sale is just a lot cleaner, of course. If there's look, somebody goes, I'm going to get Camden Yards. Yeah, this whole thing over here is a cluster with Masson. But you know what? Eventually that's going to get figured out, and I can get in there, and maybe I'll actually be able to help, Foster move that thing across the finish line or whatever it is. But that, to me, is a situation that is far easier to handle than getting a new ballpark built and potentially relocation. That is so difficult, man. It just requires so much to align not only with the clubs and the league and the owners approving that sort of thing. It has to happen in those markets. So those things you mentioned before, the TV deal, the political will, the money. And, and once again, whether that all pencils out, you leave Baltimore going, well, it's just not as great as it used to be, whether it's true or not, and I'm going to go someplace smaller. Well, that could be an advantage because you're not overly saturated. Nashville has a couple of things, and Portland has a couple of things. Montreal has a couple of things, but it's not like, going into a small market like, I think Las Vegas is completely oversaturated. You're going to have the Raiders there, you have the Knights there, you have a brand new Maury Stadium. You want to go ahead and put an MLB team in there? Man.
And it's only 120 like all year too. That's going. You're going to have to play in a blimp, right?
Clearly, in Las Vegas, you would have to have.
I've always thought Vegas was not happening, quite frankly. I've always looked at Nashville, and I've always looked at if they put the team up for sale, a guy like Phil Knight, right? Like literally, you say Uncle Phil, but if there's some guy like that says, I want to create a legacy, which is what Angelos was about. Angelos was as narcissistic, and he is the embodiment of Trump. They're almost like the same kind of guy, like literally who they are. And the way they think. I mean, just watching all of the tactics, all of that. But it really is about if Mr. Big pops up and wants to be Mr. Big for Portland or Mr. Big for Nashville and roll in with Garth Brooks on one arm and Carrie Underwood on another and be a hero and say, call himself a sportsman. If that Texas oil guy comes along and says, my dream is for Austin, Texas to have a Major League Baseball team, and I'm going to write the check, That's what this used to be about when Wayne Weaver brings the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? When Jerry Richardson births the Charlotte it was about a really rich guy and Peter Angelos is one of them, rich guy that just wouldn't let anything stop him, literally. And I feel like if Montreal, Mexico City, Portland, or Nashville had a guy like that, this is a very vulnerable situation here. We are vulnerable now. We are vulnerable to losing the franchise, and that's something that hasn't passed my lips since 1985, 86, 87, when we were vulnerable to Edward Bennett Williams taking the team to Washington, and I can still visit the Bullets, even though they're the Wizards, you know what I mean, and the Capitals or whatever. But taking the team, like, out of Baltimore and Camden Yards having weeds growing in it, I don't know what that's going to do to the state or the city or to galvanize people. But Maury, as a guy who lives in the city, we got bigger problems than the baseball team here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
We really do. And when you start to weigh them publicly to say, do we want a baseball team or do we want less crime and an education system that works for young people in our community? And do we want businesses coming here? Do we want a baseball team here? These are questions we're going to have to ask as a population in the same way you have to ask that when your citizens all get together and say, hey, let's go steal the Orioles. It's going to cost us $3 billion as a community over the next 30 years. Do you want to put in for that? Maury does, but does Portland, And I think all these municipalities have to ask this right now.
Yeah, and the thing that I think is going to be really interesting, and we haven't talked about this, was when we had the last round of sales baseball, Cubs, the Astros, the Rangers, if you look at the people that were involved in that, there was a lot of the same names involved. Jim Crane, for one, who now owns the Astros, he had his hat in the ring for all those clubs that I mentioned. And so when this opens up, you do wonder whether there are individuals that have said, look, I really want to be back in this thing. I really want to get that team that I never got before. Well, the Ricketts family has been like this. They finally wound up with it. But so it does beg the question as to whether that happened. And
can you honestly say, Maury, that Sunday morning when that story hit, right? Like a guy like you sees it, we all saw it, all the people in that there were 5 really rich people that reached for their phone on Sunday and said, how do I get the Angelo? Let me meet the Angelos family down in Nashville. I want to talk to them about owning the Orioles. Wherever the Orioles would play, wherever that would be. Were there 5 really rich guys that woke up to that Sunday?
Well, no. I think that if you were going to have that conversation, that's probably happened long before Sunday. And the reason for that is, as soon as once again, this is, look, we can talk bad or, good or ill of Peter Angelos, but the honest to goodness truth is it doesn't take a, brain surgeon to sit there and look that he's getting old and he's, at the end of the line here. I mean, there is clearly, the baseball clearly is going, hey, man, what are you guys going to do? We need to kind of figure this out. And we're really sorry for your family and everything, but how are you guys planning on doing this so that we're prepared? And I can't imagine that there are people sitting around that are going, they see the same thing that we do. So, does it accelerate it? Maybe. I don't know. I'm waiting to see whether the story has more legs beyond the single story that we have. If we start to see this pick up more steam, then I think that there will be something about that, right? I mean, clearly, either the Angelos family is putting out feelers and basically saying, look, we're really seriously getting out of here, which is what that story largely was. I mean, it doesn't take, you put 2 and 2 together and figure that out. But it will be interesting to see how others are. I'm waiting to see what the league has to say, whether there's anything built in to the ownership agreement that doesn't state before the team can be moved, someone in Baltimore gets the right of first refusal, so that there is an opportunity to try to say that. And most of the time, that is baked in. They don't. I'll get back to this. Picking up teams and moving them, it creates all kinds of problems. It's just not an easy thing to do, especially for baseball when there are so many games. And there's concerns about attendance right now. There's concerns about television. You're starting to see smaller and smaller ballparks. That works to the advantage of some smaller markets like the ones that, could potentially be relocated to. But overall, right, I mean, it's not a good time right now to be talking about picking up and moving teams. And I just get back to this. My gut says in these instances that they would want to try and make it work where they're at. Now, to you, I don't know. Or whether it does somebody, I don't know. But at the very least, you would try and make it work here in Baltimore first. things change, Nestor. You know, political regimes move and change, and things undulate. The economy goes up and down. That's, I think, more of a concern for Baltimore right now than anything. If things are distressed right now, in a time of largely very much upside across the country, you know, largely for very rich people, but still, the economy is in pretty good shape and unemployment is in pretty good shape. That when, and it's just a matter of when, not if, the economy goes sour, how is that going to really influence things? Then you really have a problem when you're already in a potentially distressed market with a distressed club that's absolutely distressed, and you're asking for people to come up with money to try and either go to games or fund stuff. So, you know, it's not an easy thing to get solved.
He is Maury Brown. He is Bizball Maury. And, you know, I know you're working on some baseball stuff here as well as we got pennant races. The Orioles played real major league teams, the Astros, the Yankees. We had the Chris Davis fight in the dugout. We've had some activity around here. Lost 23-2 this week. So it hasn't all been about that kind of activity. But I know we do have some pennant races and some good baseball being played in other places. And I think the trading deadline was fascinating around the Astros as well, right?
Yeah, you know, the Astros look, of course, I mean, they look very strong. And it's funny, it reminded me a lot of when Verlander came over. You know, it was like the clubhouse was like, I can't believe that my team and, you know, our general manager and owners sitting on the sidelines, we could have been doing something. We're right there. And it's like, boom. And it was like, oh, no, okay. I mean, yeah, you know, they picked up somebody pretty good over there. So, you know, Greinke, I think, is an interesting ad. He's an interesting clubhouse guy, but I don't think that means a hill of beans in the matter of any of this stuff. They clearly, because the Yankees did not go out and get starting pitching, which places, you know, they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do in the bullpen if they couldn't go out and get a quality first line starter. They're going to have all that weight on their bullpen. But I still look at them, of course, and the National League is pretty much wide open. And it really is amazing right now to look at the National League. I look at the Mets and I go, okay, when does this fever dream end? And, you know, of course, Mets fans are like, I don't care. I'm just going to go with it right now. It's pretty great. But you've got, you know, I feel like everybody gave them a hard time about the wild card, but thank goodness for it, because if not, you would have a bunch of divisions that would just look bad. And this is the thing I think that bothers me the most right now, Nestor, is that if not for largely the National League wild card race and where things are in that league, there's a lot of disparity right now. The Orioles are clearly very bad. The Mariners are very bad. The Pirates are very bad. And this is not good. This is just not good for your overall health. I understand on one side what teams are trying to do, although I'm going to take the Pirates out of that because they seem to be this year in and year out. The Orioles, of course, had some glimmer of hope there for a little bit, and then they squandered it, and that's bothersome as well, I think. So I don't like where baseball has been at the last couple of seasons. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with this labor deal. The players are very, very much entrenched right now, and you haven't seen that in a while. There's really was some loosening up. Was that after Don Fear left? Michael Winnie, God bless his soul, was a very, very bright guy and very good. But there started to be some slipping in the owner's favor after Don Fear left, largely after 2002. Started to see it slip a little bit, and then it greatly slipped with this last deal. And I think Tony Clark is largely fighting for his life, and the PA is really serious about it. So I'll be interested to see what they do about that. And it's just they're trying to negotiate it now in mid-CBA. So the current labor deal doesn't expire until 2021. They're trying to negotiate right now. Their labor negotiations going on right now. So they may get an extension with some other stuff involved with it. I don't know what, but it's not a good time for baseball for me. I'm not feeling really high on it. While there's great play every single day of the week. I don't care. In 1995, I don't care what season you pick, the worst season in all of baseball, there was greatness going on somewhere. But overall, I didn't have a really good feeling about this season or last season, largely due to how the free agency market moved and largely about the position and change in developing young players, but then holding them down to first service clock manipulation. That's my number one pet peeve, and I think that's something that the players are absolutely going to have to focus on. If the owners are focusing on young players, well, by golly, get the money there. The ownership and management has told me repeatedly, this is Ron Rob Manfred and other senior managers. Look, cool, you guys want more money up front, that's fine. But the pie doesn't grow. So, fine, if you think that we're starting to develop more out of the front end and you want to put more money there, well, somebody on the back end isn't going to be getting as much.
Well, Adam Jones would be the greatest example here locally of all of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example. He's a very good example. And we could talk for 2 hours, Nestor, about whether paying for prior performance or, the risk involved with getting into decline years and all that stuff is worth it. But the PA, because they wanted a free market system, whether it's a free market system or not, but that's what we're calling it. The league is like, you guys wanted a free market system, and this is how it can happen. So don't gripe about it. If you want more, if you want more cost certainty going in certain places, and you want this thing slotted out, and you want to know where baseball revenue is going to, you want it to absolutely all go in a percentage to the players. Well, by golly, let's get into a cap talk. Let's talk about a true cap system. Well, the baseball players don't want that at all. The MLBPA has told me unequivocally they will never go there.
Yeah, that's what they said 25 years ago, and that's been the downfall of baseball because I talked about it at length. If there was a floor for the Padres and the Expos and the Marlins and all those teams back in the day and a real market for the bottom 10 teams to have quality players, then the Tampa Bay Rays wouldn't be the turnstile that they've been over the last 25 years, to be honest, as well as the Oakland A's and many other teams that have basically just been a JV for the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Cubs, right?
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, that is largely the concern. I mean, and so once again, owners are going, okay, cool. And the PA is like, well, if we get more money up front, and let's say we take out, let's make it to where all service level 2 guys enter salary arbitration instead of, having to mostly be 3-year guys. And then that all cascades when they get into free agency, and so they get it on the back end. No. I mean, baseball's going, yeah, okay, cool. We'll give you that money up front, but you're crazy if you think, and we'll just, once again, you brought up Adam Jones, well, players like that. It's just thought that there might be a more robust market for in the past. And, analytics have gotten better, and they're like, hey, we can get more, we spend less, and we get more eventually out of these younger players. So I don't know how that's going to go. It's really going to be contentious, I think. Is it going to be so contentious that we strike? It's interesting. Rob Manfred said, this is interesting. Somebody's noted that, of course, here we are around the 25th anniversary of the strike, and he said, I think that we're smart enough to not let that happen again. Well, that squarely put the onus on the players. I mean, that doesn't. So if you're the players, you're going, yeah, well, if you guys don't quit manipulating service clock time and stop, doing this stuff around free agency and making it bad, which of course is, debatable. I always talk about whether Scott Boras holding players back until March is good at all, whether they get into a true signing period, that kind of thing. They've got to get that sorted out. It's just trying to put it all on the players to go, hey, you guys are smart enough not to strike because look what happened to us. They're going to go, yeah, that's good, all good and well, but you guys are screwing us over. And so I'm just not feeling very comfortable right now. I don't know if it's enough for a work stoppage, or if it is a work stoppage, Nestor, hey, look, is it going to really kill anybody if we lose January 1st to the 7th? No, because nobody's doing anything, and that's what's happened with the NFL and other leagues prior. Your off season is when your work stoppage is. There's nothing going on during that period of time. But, if it starts getting into spring training or when catchers and pitchers report, then it's a different ball of wax. And I sure hope that doesn't happen. It was just so bad 25 years ago. I hope it doesn't happen again.
I remember it vividly, or as they say, yes, I remember it well. Maury Brown is our guest. He's Bisbal Maury. I've kept him overtime. We haven't even talked about AC/DC, but I did see the show, and I am promising you at some point next summer when you put that festival together, the tribute festival thing, that I'm going to make some sort of concerted effort to get out to Portland and see you in a Malcolm Young wig.
You should come on out because it's the 10-year anniversary of that thing, and it's going to be big. I mean, the crowds were good. I don't know, 6,000 people a day. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. And so I'm going to go in and do a smaller version of that here out in the beautiful Eastern Oregon, where some people from Idaho will come over. I'm doing that on Saturday. And, it's winding down a little bit from the festivals, but I got a bunch of club stuff set up. I'm not done doing this thing yet, Nestor. I keep going, I have a little bit
Do you guys like do the Black and Black album in order or anything? I mean, do you take requests?
Yeah, we did.
You do. Okay, you
yeah,
do.
in January we played the entire Back
Nice.
and Black album exactly.
It's the way it's meant. It's the way God meant for it to be. I think, honestly. Right?
Yeah, and then we did some other stuff out of that, but that was like just the entire album, and then we did some other stuff. We did Let There Be Rock and some other stuff. You can't get out from not doing, Highway to Hell and stuff like that. But I'm interested to see whether they have anything new come out. And it's sounding like that's going to happen. And until then, I'm kind of basking in the joy of having Tool on Spotify and having it available via streaming services. So I'm getting my prog metal thing out of my system right now. So that's a pretty great thing. So, but yeah, the AC/DC thing is not going away anytime soon, and God bless it, keeps me young.
What do you do for money, honey? How do you get your kicks? That's all I can say. He plays rock and roll in a band. He also reports on baseball and the business of sports at Forbes. He is Bizball Maury. He is my friend, and I owe him 15 minutes of his life he'll never get back. Maury, love you. Appreciate you. We'll see you soon, man.
All right, man. Thanks so much for having me. You take care.
Maury Brown, my friend from Forbes, and Bizball Maury out on Twitter in Portland, Oregon, and an insider for all things baseball, franchises, valuations, and really the league office. So make sure you're checking out my man Maury. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Make sure you're checking out Baltimore Positive, all of our incredible sponsors around here. If you've heard them, Curio Wellness. I got my hat on right now, the Holistic Spa, with all the products you need, including the cannabis education, as well as our friends at Hammer Nails. I've got my shirt on here. My hair's not long yet, but Faith keeps saying she's going to shave me. So next time I'm in, I'm going to work on the beard and work on the professional shave. Manicure, pedicure, the TVs, the adult beverages. It's Hammer and Nails. Also, our friends at Strategic Factory creating masterpieces. You're going to see some new Baltimore Positive swag around here the next couple weeks as I get my logo out for football season. We're excited about it. Strategic Factory, they do it all up there. They print it, they make it, they help you market it, and they're good folks, too. Our friends at Strategic Factory up in Owings Mills. Nasty at WNST.net is my hotline. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.